Introduce Lori Kukuska. Lori is the design project manager for the Mall of America, and she also has a Mary Kay business. She is the head of the Women in Business Oregon group for the White Bear Area Chamber, and Lori is going to introduce our speaker. Lori, thank you very much.
Lori's going to hide behind a podium. So I would like to introduce Nazie Eftekhari. She is an innovator devoted to serving people and advocating for their rights. She is the founder of the Ezra Group and the CEO and principal architect for HealthEZ, a Minnesota-based company providing services designated to simplify health plan administration for employers. Prior to founding HealthEZ in 1997, Ms. Eftekhari earned national recognition in 1982 for designing the nation's first preferred provider organization. The term PPO was coined to describe her innovation, which brings together doctors, hospitals, and other health providers to form a network in order to negotiate and provide services at attractive rates in return for the opportunity to serve clients of their insurer and third-party administrator. Ms. Eftekhari has lifelong devotion to education and serving on the Board of Visitors for the University of Minnesota Medical Board, the Board of Overseers for the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management, the Speakers Cabinet Leadership Circle. Passionate about human rights, she is also on the board of the Iranian American Political Action Committee, serves as the director of the Board of Nonviolent Initiative for Democracy, and is a founding member of the YALDA Network, Women and Others in Iran. In addition, she founded the Foundation for the Children of Iran, an organization dear to her heart that is has a dedicated service of 1991 to enable indigent children from Iran and Iranian origin to receive health care services in the United States that are not available for them in Iran. Other recognition for her leadership in business and service to the community, Ms. Eftekhari received the 2011 International Immigrant Achievement Award for the International Leadership Institute. Her accomplishments and contributions have also been recognized through numerous awards, including Woman of the Year by the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, the Twin Cities Women Changemaker by the Minneapolis and St. Paul Business Journal, Small Business Person of the Year, the Minnesota Advocates for Human Rights Award, and the Women of Distinction Award. HealthEZ has been named the top 100 workplaces in the Minneapolis Star Tribune, and the Ezra Group has been cited by City Business as one of the top regional 25 women-owned businesses. Ms. Eftekhari is a graduate of the London School of Economics and holds a master's degree in international relationships from the University of Southern California, and is a healthcare administrator for the University of Minnesota. She has a son, Saham, and a daughter, Raz, who are absolutely delights and joys to her world. So without further ado, may I introduce Nazie Eftekhari.
Thank you. That was very sweet. Thank you so much. Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Great. Thank you for inviting me today. Thank you for doing that challenging introduction. It's like reading a foreign language. It's my pleasure to be with you. I'm going to get to my slides very quickly, but don't worry about them. We can send you copies of the slides, and we can also, they're just really intended to keep me on track because I can digress and very quickly. And Ben and I are going to try to figure out how to do this in some kind of coordinated fashion. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about my experience in business and try to stay focused on one key area, and that is innovation, which is a particular favorite of mine. And of course, Minnesota is a state that's particularly known for this. So I think that's why I sort of got on so well from the day I landed in this great shores in September of 1978 to go to university. So Ben, if you want to just hit it. This is our building actually in Bloomington, Minnesota, and one of the things that you see is sort of like an expression of who we are is we use our building as a banner, and during election time, one of the things we say is just like, please vote. You know, I'm an immigrant and I never had a vote until I became a citizen, and nothing makes me more crazy than the fact that people in the rest of the world are killing themselves to have a vote, and people here don't go and just exercise that one thing that this nation asks of you besides paying taxes, which is an awfully painful obligation of citizenship. So I wish they would do the one thing that isn't so painful. Hit it, Ben. Thank you. So to talk to you about my life, HealthEZ, of course, is the center of my life, and we'll talk a lot more about that. But I think, as you heard in the introduction, I try to do a little bit more with various aspects, including my alma mater, the University of Minnesota, healthcare, education. The Prince Ali Reza Pahlavi Foundation raises money for ancient Iranian studies at Harvard, because now in the sort of post-Islamic world, there's a lot of money available for Islamic studies, but not so much for ancient Iran studies. So people have forgotten about Cyrus the Great, whose iconic words were, "I hereby free the Jews of Babylon to worship freely." And also, you know, if you've studied the Bible in Isaiah, where it says, "The Lord commandeth unto him to build my temple in Jerusalem." So, you know, Cyrus has a long, long legacy that is documented both in biblical verses as well as in historical documents, and that has all been forgotten, and we want to have that be remembered. If you want to flip through to the next one. Let's talk a little bit about business lessons. I always feel it's like not about new ideas, but acting on ideas. I tell people that 1 million people have the same idea around the world at the same minute. There's really hardly ever original thought. The number of times I've heard people either pick up a thingamajig or see something and say, "Do you know, I thought of that a long time ago." And it's like, ain't that the truth? So did 1 million other people, but someone acted on it, and you did not. So, you know, if you have a good idea, do something about it, is my, you know, advice when I go to Carlson Business School and talk to all the earnest students there. You want to hit it again? So America's PPO is exactly one of those things. You know, 30 years ago, this market was dominated by HMOs who held patients and their members financial captives of the plan. They had very small networks, and you either went to their doctors or you had no coverage whatsoever. And we were sitting at Fairview Hospital late at night saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. We should design a better way to do this. What if they had better coverage when they went to our network? Because having a network, there's some advantages. People know someone's checked out these doctors and so on and so forth. But what if they wanted to go to Mayo Clinic for a second opinion? Why not? They should be able to do that. So let's have a different level of coverage. And that's when Paul Elwood, sitting at Christmas Lake, you know, right here again in Minnesota, said, hey, let's call it a preferred provider organization. It's good to know how to name things. Paul Elwood was very clever at that. He named HMOs, HMOs, and PPOs, PPOs. Again, Minnesota, the land of innovation. So that's how we came up with the first PPO in the nation. And guess what? The HMOs copied that, and PPOs are the prevalent form of healthcare delivery in the United States today. It is the model preferred by consumers. And almost 75% of the nation are covered by what is called a PPO. Let's go to the next one. So life before HealthEZ. Will you watch this short video with me?
It's really quite simple.
I get sick.
I go to the doctor.
I get the care I need. My health plan takes care of everything.
I give the clinic my plan number.
We complete the paperwork for each claim.
We send the claim to the health plan network administrator.
Of course, we also send a statement to our patient.
Even though they're not supposed to pay it.
I reprice the claim and forward it to the plan administrator.
I receive the claim and process it.
Then we make sure we have the funds from the member's employer.
If not, we contact the employer before paying the claim.
After I see my doctor, I get a statement from the clinic.
And then I get a form from my health plan explaining what's covered.
The statements don't match, but I'm instructed not to pay the bill anyway.
I get another letter telling me that my claim is being reviewed.
Now that I'm sure that we've collected the funds from the member's employer,
we authorize payment for our part of the claim.
after a claim review, we send a check to the patient's provider.
We send a revised bill to the patient for the balance due.
After a month or so, the statements start coming again. First, I get a bill from my doctor.
But this one I pay attention to because I'm supposed to pay it.
it.
At least I think I'm supposed to pay it.
I get another statement from my health plan.
Where I'm told to pay a different amount.
I just ignore the bills until I get one that says past due.
I don't have to pay for months.
If I have a question about my bill,
I call my health plan.
I call my doctor.
I call my insurance company.
I call my employer.
Finally, I send a check to my doctor.
And if I never hear back, I know it all worked out just as planned.
It's really quite simple.
So I am a working mother, and this is in 1998. I sat down and this is what I saw the world as. I thought, this is the most crazy thing I've ever seen. Nobody can figure out what the heck is going on once they've gone to the doctor, even if they're happy with the health care they got. Even if the result is a blessed child that you love more than life itself, by the time the billing cycle is done, you're like, take it back. I don't want it. oh, Lexus. Next slide, please. So the not so funny depiction of that video, and we don't have time to go through all of this, this is the actual billing cycle when you have, whether you have a strep throat test, God forbid, or a liver transplant. By the way, we in healthcare don't care. For those of you who are in business, and all of you are because you're in the Chamber of Commerce, we don't care about the materiality of the bill. It can be for $12, it can be for $1 million. We go through the same billing cycle. We are absolutely agnostic about the amount of money that's involved. And there are a few things about this, and I can really explain this to you. Healthcare providers are not half as crazy as this makes you think they are. But the system has evolved over time, you know, when the government got involved in the billing cycle and so on with Medicare and Medicaid, and I could like put you to sleep explaining this to you. But trust me, there is rhyme and reason for every part that got added to this. But the net result of it is you, the consumer sitting in the middle of this, and you, the employer paying for this, have inherited a system from hell that nobody can figure out. But lots and lots of people are making money off of it, and they refuse to cede ground. And this part of the system sucks up 30% of the cost of healthcare. And it's a sin. And I live in this part of the system. I make my living in this part of the system. And I'm here to tell you this is just wrong. And you know, for all I know, banking is done this way. For all I know, all businesses have this Rube Goldberg, Keystone Cops routine that's got 21 steps for accounts receivable and payable. I don't know, but you know, they do it behind the wall, so I don't see it. They all might go, yikes, and scream and hand the piece of paper back and forth 21 times. But in healthcare, they do this, it's like sausage making right in front of you. You know, and they gotta stop doing this. So next, what HealthEZ does is we step in through a series of, you know, we've tried to cut into the system in the most logical place and take the consumer out of financial transactions with their doctor and hospital. Because you can do that. There's a simple way to do that, so doctors and their patients, hospitals and their patients are not going back and forth having this conversation that's a lose-lose-lose conversation. And the employer is stuck in the middle paying gobs of money and never getting so much as a thank you, ma'am. Because in our world, employers are women. So I think that it's really important that to simplify processes, if you want them to be simple, you can't pretend they're simple. You actually have to take steps out of the process and then allow the consumers not to have to deal with this massive amount of paperwork so they can actually focus on, is this the right doctor? Where is the less expensive MRI? You know, if consumers have to get a ton of paperwork for every time they go to the doctor and they're tearing their hair out, figuring out what they owe and to whom they owe it, and they get something that's called an explanation of benefits, which explains nothing, and you don't feel like you got a benefit, then you're not going to ask the fundamental questions of, is this the right treatment for me? Or why am I paying $1,000 for an MRI when there's a $200 MRI available 5 doors down? Next slide. So HealthEZ, cutting through the process and simplifying it, also sends you an online statement. You don't get EOBs, you don't get, this is not a bill, don't pay it, don't pay it. I don't know if you should pay it. Get back to me on Wednesday because you don't have a life besides figuring out healthcare bills or whatever it is. You get one monthly statement. It's online. By the way, every day you can go online and see the claims that have been paid for that day, the claims that are on hold, anything you want. It's like online banking, you know, like all the rest of your transactions, you know. I mean, we're making it sound like it's genius, but it's the way it should be, but nobody else does it. So this statement has all of your healthcare transactions, all of your family's healthcare transactions. It has your deductibles year to date. It has your HRA, your HSA, your flexible spending, your pharmaceuticals. You really don't have to spend 20% of your life chasing that part of your life, illness. I keep telling my employees, remember, people didn't go to Victoria's Secret to buy lingerie for the one they loved. They got sick. That's how they came to our door. So they already resent every bit of this transaction. Let's make it easy for them. You know, let's make this icky part, this horrible part of their life, easy. So this HealthEZ statement is available to you online, wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in the world, you know, at night, in the middle of the night, etc. Want to flip to the next one? And then you have a payment facility. You can pay your doctor bills, you can pay your HealthEZ, you can pay your anybody you want. Click and pay. You can pay it out of your health savings account, you can pay if you have an HRA, if you have flexible spending, or you can put your credit card bill on. You can pay all of your amounts that you owe, you can pay some of the bills. If you think a bill isn't correct, don't pay that one. So none of this sitting down, finding all these sheets of paper around the house to figure out what you owe, to whom you owe, explaining to your wife why your health plan is so crappy. Didn't you say this was, didn't you say allergy shots were covered? Didn't you say this was covered? Why is the physical covered but the test's not covered? You know, none of this nonsensical conversation. Click and pay or don't pay. Next slide. Lesson 2 is it's not about innovation, it's about scaling. So anybody can figure out what a problem is, like we just showed you. Anybody can figure out how to solve a problem, but you know, doing it for 5 people doesn't matter. Doing it for 5,000 does. Doing it for 50,000 is even better. Doing it for 500,000, right? Next slide. So at HealthEZ, we do a lot of things that allowed us to scale up. Each employer has their own custom websites. You know, we're able to, we offer this around the nation, in every state in the union, so on and so forth. And we do this thing which we call mass customization. So like the jumbo health plans, we don't drive you to one jumbo website, but we have smaller websites for each employer, but we can scale up. Next one. And we've got things like your ID card can be on your, you know, iPhone, BlackBerry, whatever. So depending on where you're at in your life or where your employees are at, you know, you can get the plastic cards or you can get these types of cards, which of course are much more user-friendly for certain types of consumers, certainly for providers, and certainly from our perspective. Next. Lesson 3. It's not about scale, just about scaling, but understanding the appropriate scale. I maintain to you that there are certain businesses that get to certain sizes and they just cannot take care of their members. I don't know what that size is in healthcare, but I think that when you have to call a healthcare company for hours and hours and hours and navigate phone trees, I don't know if phone trees are intended for psychiatrists' offices or health plans or certain types of companies. I tease my friends who are shrinks and I go, you know, if I'm like feeling a bit not myself and I call you and it says, if you're feeling suicidal, press 1. If you're feeling like you want to kill your shrink, press 2. This is not helpful advice. You know, I mean, there are just some businesses where a human being ought to answer the phone. And if healthcare isn't one of those businesses, I don't know what is. Let's not take humans out of every transaction. Now, some businesses, it's super convenient to have, you know, a phone tree and you can go through it and it's great. But there are businesses. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, sooner or later you'll work for a small company. And this is a very important point for me because I think today in America we worship at the altar of big companies. You know, they're always on the news, they're everywhere, they get every tax break, they get, you know, and I could just go on, you know, this is another topic that I could go on about for an hour. Next slide. You know, the smaller companies in America, which are employers with less than 50 employees, represent 1/3 of the jobs in this country. So when smaller companies hurt, America really aches. And I think these are very compelling statistics. And the survival rates of smaller companies are hugely compelling. So I don't know why when I turn on the news and I see, and it doesn't matter whose White House it is, there's not Republican, it's not Democratic. I don't know why when I turn on the news, I'm always seeing big company guys going to the White House and to the Congress, and I don't know why their issues are always in the forefront, and I don't know why it's all this too big to fail stuff. Why aren't they looking at these statistics and worrying about small companies? The small companies in America, the people who make and build the small companies in America, are what everybody in America should be worried about. If we catch a chill, all of America gets pneumonia. The big guys lay off tens of thousands of dollars. They wake up in tens of thousands of people. They wake up in the morning. They lay off tens of thousands of people, and the rest of us absorb. Smaller employers absorb that shock before the week is out. Next slide. And look at the financing of the businesses. I mean, what's happened in terms of loans to small companies, and all we hear is that the government is willing to do loan guarantees. But if nobody is giving loans, who cares who's going to guarantee it? I'll give you loan guarantees. Go get yourself a loan. You know, what's this perfect storm for small companies in the United States is something that we really, you know, and I don't say this because it, you know, loans affect me today particularly. But what affects small companies in America affects all of us. So I really wanted to sort of bring this issue up as I talk about scaling, because all of us catch the tide or catch the wave when small companies sort of go up and down and up and down, because we cannot no longer rely on the decision making of the big companies. And I can, again, we can go through the statistics and numbers until you guys die of boredom. But the point is there. Next slide. So it's always, always, always about people. It's always, always about finding your own sweet spot in terms of size. And it's always about acting on your ideas. Next slide. Remembering the people. This is how we answer the phone at our company. There's never a phone tree on any of our lines. So when you call, a person picks up the phone and says, "How may I serve you?" And it's not so much a reminder to you that we know we're in the service business. It's a reminder to us every day on every call that we're here to serve people when they most need to know that someone cares. Someone cares that you're sick. Someone cares that you're confused. Someone cares that something went wrong with your bill. Next slide. Lesson 5, it's never about the money. I always tell the students and the people that, you know, they say, how did you get to where you get to? I say, I swear to God, I never woke up in the morning and said, I just want to be the richest girl in Minnesota. I wonder that people pay you in America to do all the stuff you love to do anyway. This is what makes this such an amazing country. I mean, you just got to love it. You love to play baseball, they pay you gobs of money. I don't even know what baseball is. But I always say it because it sounds cool. If you like to act, they pay you gobs of money to act. If you like to do business stuff, they pay you money to do your business. I mean, whatever it is. If you like to organize people, I mean, this is what's so fantastic. You can get paid to do anything. Oh my gosh, this is an amazing country. So, you know, forget about making money. The money, they just throw money at you. So long as you do what you love and you do it well. And I love what I do. I think what I do, like delivering health products well, is God's work. Like, I just cannot imagine running a widget factory in Detroit. I'm so glad I did this, even if I do have to have mics taped to my bum, because mics are still in 2013, mics are designed for men and not women. But hey, we can still live in a man's world and navigate it with 3-inch heels and whatever. Whatever it was Ginger Rogers said. Next slide. And I just want to tell you about the last thing that I'm working on right now as we speak with Garry Kasparov, the Russian chess master. It's called Virtual Elections We Choose. And right here, right now, tomorrow is the election day in that place we call the Islamic Republic of Iran, being conducted by the regime in Iran. As you know, it's sort of a kabuki circus that happens every few years, and at the end of it, really awful things happen to the people. During it, really awful things happen to the people. The elections last time round were very high profile, covered internationally. The two candidates that lost to the current so-called president of Iran are still imprisoned, along with the candidates' wives. So tomorrow is elections. I am part of an international committee that's headed by Garry Kasparov that launched a virtual election, international election. We have 20 candidates. One of them is a woman by the name of Nasrin Sotoudeh, human rights attorney, who is in Evin prison inside Iran. The other one is internationally acclaimed film director, Iranian film director, Jafar Panahi, who's won the Cannes Film Festival's Palme d'Or. He is another of the candidates. It is a symbolic action on our part. But at any rate, the virtual elections are going on now. People from inside Iran, despite the regime's barriers, and despite bringing down, the regime has brought down the internet, blocked it, so on and so forth. We have filters that break through the virtual US Embassy and other sites. We are breaking through. People are voting. And we hope for a good turnout. And we hope to announce the people's choice just ahead of the polls opening in Iran. And we hope to be able to show the world that Iranians had a way to express their wishes. And so thank you for listening to me. Thank you for allowing me to share with you this piece of news, this new electronic digital approach to breaking down walls and breaking down borders. And thank you for your time. It is my honor to have addressed you today. Thank you. Do I do questions now? I think we have time for questions, or do you want to? Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. In regards to Obama has talked about in healthcare, the administration of healthcare being such an issue as far as cost. If you were to break down $1 of healthcare, what percentage of that would you guesstimate goes to administration, and what percentage could we save through some of this streamlining?
Well, the estimates are about, depending, about 25 to 30% of healthcare goes to administration. So they're talking about, and Again, some of my numbers may be old and depends on what, there are two aspects to administration. So one aspect is the health plan administration, which is the side I just showed you. And then there's a whole burden of administration for providers, medical records, and all of that. You've heard Obama, when he's talking, he's often talking about the medical record side. And I've just talked about the other side that employers pay for. It is, when healthcare was in, we're talking about $1.12 trillion. We're talking about 200 plus of that is going, and it's estimated to go to 300. So, there's a real opportunity. And as you know, it's been an industry wholly resistant. It's very innovative in pharma, very innovative in imaging, very innovative in a lot of areas, wholly resistant to change in adopting technologies. And it's really understandable, because if you're sitting in a hospital and somebody says, should we get the next generation MRI, or should we get a better billing system, or a better this system or that, you go, MRI wins every time, So there are a lot of opportunities in the administration in space. And I think that there'll be a big push. How much of it will be successful, we'll see. It's not very, the problem is, and critics will point to this and say, the VA has been such a failure in this area in some aspects. So where the government has had a lot of control, they've not been successful. So why are we to believe that if we, there'll be a better influence this time? But you just got to keep trying. And I don't put my faith in the government, I put my faith in the private sector. Yes?
How was your company affected by MNsure being introduced this year?
By
the state plan, the state
MNsure.
MNsure?
Not really. We don't do any work with, we only work with the private sector. We only work with the employers. And it is very, for us, frankly, Minnesota has not been particularly hospitable in terms of state, because they work with the big companies and they really don't make any effort to work with the smaller entrepreneurial companies. And historically, the big companies have done a very effective job of driving out any competition. Yes?
When you started and you set up that PPO, did you think about how it might fail? I mean, it was such a big undertaking, and I mean, it just...
No, at the time I was in my 20s, and I always tell people that I was too dumb to know, And I thought I had 1 year of working capital, and I thought that was a long time. And which is fabulous. When I have people come into my office with lots of degrees and lots of experience, and they're in their 40s and they go, I want to do what you do. I go, you're never going to do that. You're way too smart and experienced, So I think at the time when we started the PPO, I was totally fearless about failure. I don't know. I think that a lot of people like me are not driven by fear. I think people think entrepreneurs are, we are sort of risk minimizers, and so we're not really driven by fear. Any other questions?
Tell us a little bit about how you got to
Oh, that was, I had just finished, I'd gotten my postgraduate degree in international relations, and I was heading back home to Iran. I'd been educated in Europe, and I was heading back home to Iran, and that summer was sort of the fortuitous summer of '78, or when Iran was in sort of turmoil. And a friend of my parents was the Minister of Health in the King's last government. Well, not last government. The last government was a military government, but in the last government, and they had this very ambitious plan for universal healthcare coverage for all the citizens of Iran. And part of that plan was EDS. Do you remember Ross Perot? You know, EDS was coming to install a computer system for Social Security, and everybody would have cards and da-da-da-da. And as part of that plan, they wanted professionally trained people to take over and run the healthcare system in Iran. And the guy who headed it, the Minister of Health, was a graduate of the University of Minnesota. You know, and his wife was Minnesotan. She was from Winona, Helen. You know, you talk about, like, honestly. So he had, at the time, he really believed in the University of Minnesota MHA program, which is one of the premier programs in the country. And he came and negotiated with the university and said, we're going to send students from Iran here to learn how to run our system in Iran. And they said, great, okay, they made the deal. And the first 6 students, you know, were supposed to come. So then at one point he spoke to me, and Professor Dornblaser from the University of Minnesota came to Iran, and they said, you know, you should apply to go. And I said, no, you know, I'm not interested in healthcare, you know, last famous words. And I have a degree and I don't want to go to America. I have no interest. You know, I'm sort of been educated in Europe and I'm good, thank you. And in the meantime, by the way, Tehran, there are demonstrations and people are going nuts, you know. And he said, no, you should go, you should apply. And I said, why? And he goes, you know, Nazie, the world, well, first of all, he said 2 things to me. One thing he said to me was, you are really smart. And I always I tell this to people because that was the first time in my life that somebody said to me, you are really smart. Now, as obvious as that is to you,
Sure.
Duh. Nobody had ever said that to me. So nowadays, you know, we tell every kid they're brilliant and they're this and they're that, you know, like, but just in case, you know, if you run into a smart person, tell them. You never know. Maybe nobody ever told them up until that moment. And it was like, I was like, really? I am? Oh, I'm smart. Okay. So you never know whether somebody has ever told someone, you're really smart. So the second thing, which I always remember that day, is the first day somebody ever told me, you're really smart. The second thing was that he said was, go to America. If you have the chance, go. The world of yesterday was a European world. The world of tomorrow will be an American world, and you will regret not having an American education. And I was like, oh, I loved going to school. I'd still be going to university if somebody would, you know, like take care of my kids and stuff. So I was like, okay. So I went and applied with all these other people, and 5 men were selected and me. So in the meantime, as this process was unfolding, they arrested him. So he went off to jail. I mean, it wasn't like vicious jail. It was sort of country, third world, you have to understand. Everybody eventually goes to jail. So it's not like jail. It's like, you know, there's different levels of jail. And so he was arrested. So my mom and Helen would go to see him and say, well, what should Nazie do? And he's like, get out. Get out. Tell her to get out. Get out, get out, get out. So I left Iran on September 17th, as I said, and came to the United States. And then eventually, progressively, the country went to, and Dr. Aram went from country club jail to serious jail. And on the day of the revolution, he was, you know, when they opened the doors of the jails because they thought they were letting out political prisoners, he managed to escape. A lot of his fellow prisoners were killed and executed, but he got out. Anyway, so it was a very bizarre story. And then I came here and I went to University of Minnesota, and then I went to Fairview, and I worked for a man named Carl Plato, who gave me, you know, this internship at Fairview that changed my life. And he had me over for Thanksgiving when, you know, Americans were being held hostage and people were really treating us badly. And It was just, it's a fairy tale. I'm the poster child for the American dream. I literally am the poster. I mean, I should be on the corner of Wall Street Journal every morning. I am. I am. I am, you know, if Iran was a door that God closed on me out of his wisdom, the US was the door he opened out of his mercy. Thank you for your time. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Oh, look at that.
This is fabulous. Thank you so much for coming and speaking. And this is our way of saying thank you. Something to remember Whiteberry Chamber.
I will.
All of our members.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much.